Do you think sales is a bad word? When you hear the word sales, I wonder what images come to mind. Whatever your relationship is with selling, I'm glad you're here. Let's have a conversation about how to sell like a good human. Hi, welcome to Conversations with Good Humans. I'm your host, Catherine Brown, and I'm author of the book called How Good Humans Sell. Today on Conversations with Good Humans, I'm talking with Rick Janezic, founder and CEO of StrikeZone Sales Systems. Rick is a fractional chief revenue officer to companies who sell business to business. He states that a business is only as strong as their sales, and his work focuses on consulting and strengthening sales teams to move from good to great. This recording was part of a discussion in the How Good Humans Sell room on Clubhouse, where I interviewed Rick about his focus for his consulting practice for the year. The conversation evolved into one that I felt was worth sharing with you as Rick shared what to look for when hiring your sales team. I think you'll find it valuable as you grow your sales organizations. Do you know what qualities make a great salesperson? You'll benefit from this conversation even if you are currently the only seller in your company. Rick and I met on Clubhouse, and he is what I would call a good human who sells. We use that expression because we're using the word good human to describe an alternative way of thinking about selling and an alternative way to that cheesy, sleazy stereotype of how some sales professionals tarnish our profession. And so we're so delighted to have Rick share some things about what he does to build his business and how he serves his clients and what his perspective is on selling. Rick, I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to invite you to go first and introduce yourself. And also, would you answer my first question I love to start with in an interview, which is, what do you think it means to sell like a good human?
Hey, thank you, Catherine. Pleasure to be with you. So my name is Rick Janezic. I run a company called StrikeZone Sales Systems. Just kind of flows off the tongue that way. The problem that we solve is the reality that the most consequential thing that a B2B or SaaS business company can do is get their sales team right. The challenge is it's also the hardest thing to do. So we bring a combination of management consulting with really a focus on sales to help them take a look at everything that they do. And that's across not just the sales force, but everything it takes from a sales organization perspective. So think of product development, marketing, sales, customer service, and customer success, all those things to try and take an analytical, transparent approach to figure out what's going well, what isn't. And then what do we do about that? So it's really about getting a team on the field that breaks records. That's our mission. That's our focus. And to your second question on what do I think it means to sell like a good human, I'm into heavy metal. Heavy metal being gold and platinum. So the golden rule is to treat others as you wish to be treated. The platinum rule, as I've heard it called, is to treat others as they wish to be treated. And I think that's true in life, but it's especially true in sales to be able to engage with others in a way that they wish to be treated and to always use the test. If somebody was doing that to me, would I respect that? Would I appreciate that? Would I want that? If not, don't do it that way. There's a better way to do it. Anybody can get a sale once by lying, by overpromising, by doing a variety of things. Don't be that person. Be the person that other people want to invite back in to have them buy from you again and to refer you to others.
Rick, thank you so much for that. I'm going to go right for the deeper question here. And I'm going to say, I love your answer. I think that there's a reason it's called the golden rule. There's a reason that loving your neighbor as yourself, treating others as you want to be treated is a summary of all of the law, we would say, coming from the New Testament. And my question is, one of the challenges I see that makes me want to push back just a little bit on the way you're framing that, because I know that you don't mind if I do that, because we spend a lot of time together, is the challenge I see is that my clients who feel they're doing that, who say, I wouldn't treat someone different than I would want to be treated myself. The problem is that we all are a little bit askew. And so what I mean by that is, how do you overcome the fact that we all have our own biases of how we want to be treated? So where this shows up in sales training for me is that people consistently, I'm not kidding, if I had $5 for every time someone said this to me, I would be taking this call from my third house, in Maui, because I would be so rich, because it's such a common thing that people will say, well, I'm not going to follow up with them because I don't want to seem pushy, because I wouldn't want someone to do that to me. And their sense of what is pushy, their sense of what is right is colored by their own experiences. And then they sell the way that they think they want to buy. And my point is, it's biased. Do you see that? And how would you respond to that?
Wow, you're spot on. I think from a selection piece. So I think if you take a look at what sales is, you really pick, it's about the quality of the team that you pick. And I take a look at 4 different things. I call it my sold model. So it's select, onboard, lead, and develop. And it begins with selection. And selection comes to a point of, everybody says, I have a hiring problem. No. You have a selection problem. It's picking great people, not just because they're great, but they're great for you, for where your company is, for who your clients are, for what your product is, for the kinds of people and teams and problems that that salesperson is going to be exposed to and has to be great at. So solving what that looks like sounds easy until you actually try it. The selection piece, one of the key pieces there is to understand if somebody has that combination of, I'm going to call it respectful curiosity. And what I mean by that is the follow-up piece. If you're pushy, which no one really wants to do, and everybody's kind of expected to do, being a role in sales, it's to ask that next question. But to ask that next question relative to the other, not to yourself. So I'm calling to follow up, which means, hey, where are we at? As I'm calling to get your sense for where we are. At the last conversation we had, we talked about this. What I heard was this. Did something change in our conversation, or did something change in your organization? I think to have that curiosity to want to go back and to want to understand why from their perspective rather than our own. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Keith, let me let you introduce yourself and dig into this or go to the next question you have.
So, listen, I really appreciate that. Thank you. And Rick, you touched on a bit of a raw nerve, which I'm really glad you did, actually, because hiring salespeople is well, it's actually easy, actually, because there's always plenty of applicants, and actually, making a hire shouldn't actually be that hard. The burden, the tariff, or the degree of difficulty is making the right hire for you and your culture. I know that you should hire slow and fire fast. And because if you do hire the wrong person, my goodness, that can be really disruptive, which almost certainly means really expensive as well. It is better to take a little bit more care on the hiring process. And actually, do you know what? If you're building your company's reputation, you want to build a bank of talent outside the company. So you're almost the go-to company in your market. If you want a career in sales, then you should go to Rick's company for this, or Catherine's company for that. That is a great reputation to have. Not a lot of people have that, because not a lot of people think beyond the end of their noses. And it's about having a good HR or talent acquisition function. It's about looking at the entire ecosystem and the reputation and the brand, sort of brand equity that you're building. I'm really glad you brought that point up, Rick.
Hey, Keith, thanks. If I can expand on the selection and hiring piece, because it is so critical. If you don't have a winning team, you won't have a winning team. It's about that simple. So what's a winning team look like? That's really the essence. So the hiring slow, fire fast, I look at that as every person you fire is an indication that you didn't do the homework necessary to pick the right person. That's a hard thing to say, but it's a true thing to say. If you're a fan of somebody like Jocko Willink, Navy SEAL who trained Navy SEALs, who was dropped into one of the most crucial, deadly places in the world for American soldiers, and he was told, clean it up. Most of what we do isn't life or death. It was for him. His mantra is there are no bad teams, there are only bad leaders. And if you take it from the vantage point of the number of people who win, who do extraordinarily well, and who you keep or they want to go for a better opportunity. If you've done that, if you have great people who overperform on a consistent basis, and every now and then somebody leaves to go to a competitor or do something different because it's a better opportunity for them, they're running toward, not running away from, you've done a great job on selection. Again, hard to do. One of the key things is to figure out what you must have, what they must have, and what's your schema, what's your method for testing whether or not they have enough of it. And instead of focusing on, gee, they need to do 20 things. No. They really need to do 3 to 5 things. And one of those things is going to outsize all the others. And you need to get extremely granular in terms of what that thing is that either you have to buy or you won't train on. You want to make sure that they're going to succeed, not just bring them in and take a chance. That's not good for them and their reputation. That's not good for you and your reputation or your clients or your colleagues or your sales culture. So you want to get that right. Getting that right is really hard, but it's really worth it because on average, every time you lose somebody, whatever you were paying them for a base, multiply that by 3, because that's about the consequential effect of that. If anybody wants to go on the math with that, on me with that, I do love that 4-letter word math, and we can go through that. But the selection piece is so crucially important. And I'll take a look at a very current example. Let's go to the sports world. Some guy named Tom Brady. Every single team looked past him in the draft. Every single team. He went 199th. So that means people that are paid millions of dollars a year to pick great didn't. But when Tom Brady finally did get there, he lasted for an extraordinarily long time and broke virtually every record there is. If you had the ability to really think about, what am I really hiring? Am I hiring an arm or am I hiring conviction to improve? And one of the things if you study Brady at all, it's all about his conviction to improve. Getting hiring right, super critical.
Rick, on this hiring thing, so critical. Didn't realize we were necessarily going to go down this, but are there any questions you ask at the interview stage that might uncover, unmask any red lights, if you like? And I'm thinking specifically asking the question of what tactics a salesperson might use to make sure they close the quarter over 100%. What happens when they're under pressure? How do they respond to that pressure? I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts in that area.
It's an interesting question, Keith, and the whole science of questioning. I've actually gone to courtrooms to listen to attorneys to see how they frame questions, because so much of it does come down to great questions. But sometimes so much of great questions comes down to clear thinking. So if you really want to focus on what really matters, understand what great questions look like and understand what you're really trying to assess. Once you understand what you're really trying to assess, you can understand what's that made up of. So if you break that down into 3, 5, 10 different subcomponents, 3 of those subcomponents are going to be more critical than the others. So what is it that you're really trying to purchase when you say yes to a hire or selecting a new salesperson? What is it they must have, and how will you measure it? If you don't know that, you're really not ready to hire somebody. You're really not ready to go through that process. So it'll take a long time, and you'll be frustrated, and you'll feel like you'll do a coin toss. when you are razor focused, narrowly focused on what they must be able to do extraordinarily well, the rest of it becomes that much easier and you're rinsing out a lot of the risk. Hope that makes sense.
Very much makes sense. I really appreciate that.
Hey, Rick, how are you?
Russ, good to be with you.
This is Russ Stalters, one of the co-founders of B2B Sales Magic. It's been over a year now, Catherine. I can't believe it.
I know, it's so great. It's flown by.
Before I ask you a question, Rick, one thing I wanted to mention is around selecting people. I love it. John Maxwell, the leadership expert, written, 110 books now, is a mentor of mine, and I've spent a lot of time with him. And one of the things he gets asked is, how do you motivate employees? And his answer is, you hire motivated people. And so I think that gets back to your comments on the selection process.
I would agree, Russ. Thank you. Motivation is something that is intrinsic. It's not something you can smear on like butter on a bagel.
Right.
It's either there or it isn't.
Well, I think it gets back to your comments about Tom Brady and his commitment or conviction. I think conviction is probably another element of that motivation. That conviction to improve and to become the best at what he did or what he does. Somebody wasn't sitting there and trying to motivate him to do that. So that was an intrinsic value. So I like that analogy that you shared. And Rick, as we work on improving our performance and being an amazing sales person, someone who is a good human, we need to have all of our domains in our life to be in tip-top shape. So what is something you're looking at doing differently this year in your non-professional domain to continue to grow and also to bring your best self to work and to your clients every day?
Thanks, Russ. I think that's a great question. One is structured thinking, and that is how we think is how we speak. And I met one of the guys that was on a team of mine a number of years ago. I was gifted him by one of the senior VPs. And I remember, it's been over 20 years now. I remember looking at Jim, the senior VP, and I said to him, what did I do wrong? Because I knew the guy he was bringing onto my team, and nobody wanted him. Nobody did. He was a smart guy. When I came to find out, he was a double degree guy from MIT. And if you've ever heard the joke about Massachusetts Institute of Technology, it's also called Millionaires in Training. They make some really smart people, and a lot of their smart people piece, like Harvard, like Wharton, where I went, it's all about the people you select. If you pick great people, you're going to have a pretty good rate of success. What Dan said is, I want to talk more. The guy that I was gifted, he said, I know I say too much. I want to talk less and say more. I think to be able to really focus on what it is that you want to convey to another person and say things that really land, say things that they not just hear, but they remember and they repeat. Because most of the time when we're with somebody from a sales conversation, especially in a B2B conversation, your point of contact is your internal salesperson. Usually there's 5, 10, 15 people who are part of the decision team. And if you've not done a great job of equipping that person to be able to have a conversation that's equivalent to the conversation you're having with them about why they should switch from whatever they're doing to you, which is the essence of selling, if they can't bring your case, your energy, your passion, your matchup of the problem with the solution.
It's interesting, the Millionaires in Training at MIT. I was accepted there, but wound up going to the University of Florida with a scholarship. So I guess I missed out. I should have gone to MIT. No, I like that idea of structured thinking. And I know we've had lots of discussions in this room, Catherine, over the last year about how to ask great questions, how to be an excellent listener. And so that structured thinking and really thinking about what you're trying to convey and make sure how you say it so it really lands is really great advice. And
can I jump in? We mentioned, or Rick mentioned something on intrinsic and motivation. I just want to jump in that the ancient Greek word comes to mind of enthos. And enthos is ancient Greek for enthusiasm, and it means literally from within. And that whole thing, it's not your line manager that's going to motivate you. It's you. It's you. And where are you at in your world? I just wanted to jump in for a few seconds.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I think that when you take a look at what leadership is there for, leadership is there for that same SOLD model: select, onboard, lead, and develop. And the leadership and development piece shouldn't be about force and threats. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases in sales, it is. But it's really to say, let's understand how we help you. And the sales leader should be the best, most reliable, unfoggable mirror for that salesperson to look into and see, what is it that I don't have that I need? And how am I going to get to that point? In the case of the gentleman that I had talked about earlier, that I was gifted, the very first day he came and joined my team, I said, hey, you've been with the company for a good long period of time. You've done some great things, even though I couldn't list any. I said, what can we do to help you? I want to help you be successful, because it is a reciprocal process. You're saying yes to me, I'm saying yes to you. How do we make this successful? And he had indicated he wanted to talk less and say more. And I said, how do we do that? And he said, I always wanted to take a Dale Carnegie course. So I said, if I get you in, will you go? And he said, yeah. The guy completely changed almost everything about him. It's the most amazing transformation I think I've ever seen in an individual in my several years of doing this kind of thing. So it's that ability for that whoever that leader is, to figure out what's missing and what can we do to help you and how do we get you there. And a lot of that comes, you can either say, hey, I'm going to send you somewhere. What do you think? What do you think is missing? To see how self-aware they are and how intentional and what their level of conviction is to say, I want to get better. I want to be amazing at what it is that I do.
Rick, it occurs to me as I'm hearing you speak, first of all, that we all agree in the back channel, which we have during this call, that your clarity of thought and clarity of speaking are aligned. So I think you're a great model of that. And it's a joy to hear you share what's coming out of that big brain of yours. So thank you for that. I also am struck as you're talking about how language is so important, and we kind of diverged into sales leadership and leading others as a topic, which I think is awesome. And I actually follow an executive coach who I first met on Clubhouse. His name is Ray. He is a really big proponent of careful language, and one of the things that I've taken from his training is that when you're talking about leading others, you want to make a distinction between when you're trying to be inspiring and when you are seeking to empower. And he's not a very big fan of words like inspire, because in his explanation, he would say that indicates that a person, or implies that a person needs inspiring, that they don't have that intrinsic motivation, or like Keith was saying, the enthusiasm that comes from within, and need propping up. But empowering is someone who can answer the question, here's what I think I need. I need tools. I'm going to figure it out. So I'm on this big kick right now about inspire versus empower. Not that there's never a place for inspire, but I think empower is a better word in many situations. So I that's coming to my mind as you're sharing here.
Thanks, Catherine. First, I appreciate your compliments, and I appreciate you grading on a curve for me. With regard to the motivation piece and the intentionality of words, my wife is a French major, or was a French major. She has some of the most beautiful language and really uses even though she's got a very broad vocabulary, she hires the most simple words that convey the clearest meaning. And I think that's a desire we all have, and and a reality that few have, this guy included. So I'm constantly thinking about how can I replace and use and hire the right words to convey the right meaning in that particular moment. And so much of it comes down to that. I'm going to yield. If you know me, you'll hear me talk about sports analogies a lot, but practice like you play so you can be your best when it counts the most. I think that's what we all aspire to, and it's hard to really get to that particular point. One of the books, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was either Andrea or Liz who talked about Steal the Show. It's an amazing book. I'm not all the way through it, but one of the pieces that I found extraordinarily helpful in there, and it was like a bolt of lightning that hit me as I was reading it, we're always trying to change. In some cases, we're trying to do more of what we do. In other cases, we're trying to do something different. And the author spoke about the way that we think about roles. When you're trying to be better at something, you want to be the person that you are, the role that you are, and just add on or layer on some of those pieces. In the case of if you're trying to change, if you're in a new role, or if you're trying to take on a new role or to be better at that new role, it's more about what you take away, what's crucial, what's critical, what's essential, what is most pivotal and most consequential in that role. And just thinking about the pieces and parts of that need to be there, and kind of removing the rest, kind of like a sculptor does with a block of granite. They chisel away, and it's that chiseling away to really getting down to the essence. So that's true of your actions. It's also true of your words. If you can use fewer words to get to a point, if you can use clear examples to get to a point, it makes that other person see it, get it, want it, do it. I apologize for the long walk for that glass of milk. Hopefully that made sense.
I'm curious about your early start in sales. Do you have any mentors or influencers that stand out to you, good or bad?
You know what? You learn from everybody that you meet, from every interaction. And we're all portfolio managers after it's all said and done. So what are the lessons that we learn that we want to keep? And then what are the lessons that we learn that we don't want to keep from everybody? And that could be a colleague, a client, a leader. I was fortunate to have a couple of good leaders early on. I wouldn't say I had a lot of great leaders early on, but I had a couple of people that really had a strong influence on me. One of them was a client of mine who really taught me how to sell in the big leagues. Not because he taught me how to sell in the big leagues, but he taught me how the big leagues think about dealing with salespeople. And that was super helpful. Leadership is tough. It really is. Because like sales, few people are really taught and really prepared to be amazing leaders. I think everybody aspires to that. And unfortunately, few get there. I think the aspect of care. So if you've, I know I've mentioned radical candor before. So for those of you who haven't heard about it, let me give you a quick intro. Kim Scott, the author of Radical Candor, worked for Apple, worked for Google, wanted to understand why in great companies there were amazing teams and awful teams. She found the difference was the qualities of the leader, and it came down to something that she characterized as radical candor. The ability to have extremely high care for the individual, for the team, for the mission, for the company, and for the client, and then to be extremely candid, to say the things that need to be said in a way that is unvarnished, not to wound, but to help. That's a minute worth of description, but it's hours to months to maybe years worth of effort to get to that point. And as I think back to the people that really had the greatest amount of influence on me, it was people that they weren't in that radical candor box, as Kim Scott calls it, but they were closer to it, where they would say the things that need to be said. I'm an East Coast guy. I grew up out on the East Coast, and we're, as communicators, more direct. more often. Some people can handle that. For me, I want to hear that. I need to hear that. I need to know at every given moment if there's a way that I can improve, even if I don't want to hear it, even if it's going to mean a lot of work for me to get there. It's important if you have that passion and that conviction to being better, that you do want to hear those areas that you need to shore up on, that you may not see yourself as others see you. So if you need a coach, if you need a counselor, if you need somebody that can be that mirror for you to help you see what others see in you, and then figure out how to adjust that's what I think is most critical.
It's so interesting to see how people were formed and shaped and who their influencers were. Rick, my question is that I really like to talk about purpose in selling. So I'm going to take us in a little bit different direction. Everyone's working for different reasons. And it's my conviction that when you have a purpose for yourself personally in mind, that you can activate your creativity to figure out how to accomplish those goals, and you can figure out how to sell more. And so I'll give you a quick example for me. I love to travel. I like to pay for people I love to travel with me. I like to travel nice. I like to go nice places and stay at nice places.
Remember me the next travel you do.
I will. And so it's just really, it is an identity issue for me. It's such a pleasure to say, when I say to my adult children, Daddy and I are going to go do X. If you can make it, we're covering it. And it's a joy to me to be able to do that. So literally when we plan a trip, my mind starts thinking, how am I going to have $10,000 to do that? How am I going to have $20,000 to do that? Just to be very candid and specific. I am activated because my work ties to a purpose, which ties to my identity, which says I am a person who does these things. So I give that example to share because I think everybody has that in them, and they have the ability to sell more, to be creative, to innovate, even as a BDR, even as an account manager inside a company. Most people have some flexibility about their approach and their drive and their creativity about how they will sell. So I'm curious for you, what is something you're looking forward to that drives your purpose, that ties to your goals, and gives you that activation to be innovative in how you do your own business development?
Like you, we like to travel to nice places and do nice things, and we've sponsored others to join us as well. So that's interesting that we share that vision on things. So for me, I was born on a dairy farm, and my grandfather was not a rich man. Worked hard. If you want to know what hard work is, work on dairy, because dairy is every day. You've got to have daily discipline. Doesn't matter how you feel. Doesn't matter what the weather is. Doesn't matter what's on TV. You have to get up. You have to do it, and you have to do it every single day. And I learned it's not what I wanted to do. And I thought about what I really want to do. And my uncle, who was just recently passed, was an Air Force pilot. When he finished in the Air Force, he opened back then a TV repair shop. And I remember going in his shop for the very first day and seeing an oscilloscope, this thing that you could put a probe, you could put a wire onto something, and it would show you what was really going on behind the scenes. And for me, that was magical. That's what made me to become an engineer, or led me to the choice to become an engineer. I wanted to be a brain surgeon, but they told me I wasn't smart enough. So my second choice was to be an engineer. And taking that engineer's approach, for me, helps me to take a look at others. And if the opportunity comes up that they say, gee, I'm struggling with this, I'd really like to improve that. I think we're all here to try and help others, no matter what it is that you do. If you're an attorney, if you're in sales, if you're a business owner, you're there to try and help somebody get someplace that they're not, that they want to be. So understanding what that motivation is and having big ears to really, truly, deeply listen to what's important to the other. In a sales context, you want to understand, is the problem as they see it and they describe it something that you can help them with? And if it is, great. If not, then you want to be candid about that and say, hey, that's not me, or that's not us for right now for what you're looking to do. So you make that decision. But if you take a look at it, the reality is, for the B2B context, that most organizations struggle. They don't get to where they really want to be. For me, that gives me kicks. That gives me juice and enjoyment and appreciation, because I've made a difference to somebody else. I'm going to be doing a podcast starting this year. And one of the first people I'm going to have on is a guy who worked for me a number of years ago. Great guy. He had been doing about $1 million a year for a number of years. I helped him to do a little bit better than that. And now he's to a point where he sells 50 million. So 50x different. I've had that effect on some other people as well. And I want to bring them on, feature them, and decode what it took for them to see that there was something intrinsic in themselves and how to enable that. And I think as leaders and as sales professionals and as people, I think that's something that we all aspire to.
We've got a new year. We're 1 month in. It's very easy at the beginning of the year, anytime, just try and do everything and change the world. It's not that simple. But I think unlocking our full potential is really something that very few people give enough time to think about and consider. So if somebody comes up to you and go, hey, Rick, how do I work out how to unlock my full potential? What are the first steps a person should take, especially in sales?
Hey, Yoram, thanks for your question. And we're all goal-seeking beings. We try to help fulfill the things that are important to us. And I think it's getting intense clarity as to what that goal is. If you understand what the goal is with intense clarity, and you understand your motivation for it. So the Simon Sinek start with why. Why is that important to you? I think when you can get to that real why, you'll be a monster of learning to figure out what you need to do and how you need to do it. So it's understanding your goal with intense and extreme clarity, first and foremost. And sometimes that's just a discussion to really spend some time with somebody and really say why. What is it that's so important? Why is that so important to you? I think goal clarity leads to that intense conviction that you need. Then it's having somebody who's an expert or studying an expert. What's the expert do that you don't? Figure out what that is, prioritize that, go after that.
Thanks, Yoram. Thanks, Rick. It's so fun to talk about. We've talked about sales leadership, influences, what it means to empower someone. We've talked about how to sell with purpose, what our drivers are, kind of tying our work to a bigger picture. Is there anything else you wanted to be sure to share?
I'm just a simple guy trying to dig deeper and get better every day and help others that I care about to do the same thing. I just want to say, thanks for inviting me up and having me here today.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, mods. I'm so glad you joined us today. If you would like me to come and speak with your organization about how to sell like a good human, please contact me through the website howgoodhumanssell.com. Thanks, and talk with you again.